This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. Yeah, so good evening, everybody. Let me just say hello over here. Okay, so we all could
Hi, Rabbi.
see one another. Okay,
Hi, everyone.
very good. Okay, good. So we break our regular programming for holidays, okay? And this is the first time with the holiday of Hanukkah coming around. So let's discuss holidays in general, and then we'll come to this holiday in particular. So we have our Torah level holidays, those holidays that are mentioned in the Torah, which is basically 5/6. We'll discuss those in a minute. And then we have rabbinic holidays, which is basically 2 point something. We'll see. Okay. Now, Jewish time does not start at a point and then keep working out. We go in circles. We have what's called the Ma'agal Hashanah. We have this the cycle of the year, which means as follows. We don't celebrate, we don't commemorate, we relive, we re-experience. The first of the Jewish holidays of the Torah is Pesach, Passover. That was when we had the Exodus from Egypt. We left Egypt. That was a time of freedom. That was a time of renewal. The Torah specifies it must be in the springtime. Okay, now this is an interesting diversion for a moment. We follow a lunar calendar. A lunar calendar has 354 days. Why is that? Because a lunar month is 29 and a half days. 29 and a half times 12 is 354. A solar calendar is 365. So we're 11 days short every year. Okay? The Muslims follow a lunar calendar and they don't adjust it. So therefore, their Ramadan, let's say, will start in spring, and then next year it's going towards the end of the winter, and then it's midwinter, then it's early winter, then it's fall, then it's summer, and then it's back, works its way back to spring. We don't do that. But we're 11 days short. So what do? We do what we're doing this year. What do we do, Josh? We add a month. 7 out of every 19 years, we have a 19-year cycle. 7 out of every 19 years, we add a month. If you do the rough math, 11 times 19, well, 10 times 19 is 190. 11 times 19 is 209. We just added 19 to 190, 209. And 7 out of every 19 years, we add a month. How long is a month? 30 days, 29, 30 days, 210. So that's how we realign. But why is it so important for us to realign? And this is a very important fundamental concept. The physical world is a reflection of what's going on in the spiritual world. The physical world is simply a reflection of the spiritual availability, the spiritual forces that are there. What happens every spring? There is this renewal, rebirth, reawakening. That is Pesach time. Pesach was when we had this awakening as a nation, this awakening of freedom, this awakening of throwing off that which was bounding us. In Hebrew, what's the name of the nation that we left? Mitzrayim. In Hebrew, Meitzar, min ha-meitzar karatika. Meitzar is my bounds, that which restricts me. So we had Yitziat, the exodus from Mitzrayim, from Egypt. But every year comes Pesach, comes that time, we re-enter I call it like this Epcot. Epcot is that's the Disney, right?
Mhm.
So when you go to Epcot, I've never been there, but I'll give the example, right? When you enter the pavilion of Britain, so you go to a British pub and you get your beer, right? It's not that you're in Britain, and then you go into another country. You've entered that country. With each holiday, we enter into that zone. So it's not that we remember and we commemorate. No, we re-experience, we relive it, because we are once again entering that zone. And you'll hear the blessing that we make on Hanukkah alludes to that. Yes, Josh?
Is it safe to say that that same energy that existed in the first Passover is the same energy that is existing for us to tap into today?
Exactly. Exactly. I don't know if you could hear so well. What Josh said, he said it very beautifully. The same energy that enabled the exodus from Egypt, that same energy is available every year comes the 15th day of Nisan. And it's there for us to tap into it. And that is why it's got to be in the springtime. Because the physicality, the physical world is a reflection of the availability of what's happening in the spiritual world. So that's the time of this reawakening. So the first of our holidays, Torah holidays, is Pesach, Passover. That is a 7-day holiday, Torah-wise. Outside of Israel, we keep an extra day. We're not going to go into that right now. Okay? It's a 7-day holiday. We have the first day, outside of Israel, the first 2 days are Yom Tov, which means they are Shabbat-like, meaning no driving, all of the Shabbat restrictions apply, with the exceptions being cooking. We're allowed to do cooking on Yom Tov, and that's derived from the verses. Cooking we're allowed to do. We can't start a fire, we can't extinguish a fire, but from existing flames, we can cook. What do people do? You leave a little fire on, or you've got a hot plate that's on, right? Or something that we do sometimes, which works really well. You know, they have those, I think, called chafing dishes the caterers use, and they have those little, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So if you, I'm sorry? Sternos, exactly. Right? So if you have a 24-hour candle burning, then you can take the flame from there, you take a match, you light it, you light your sternos, and then the sternos will burn out after whatever they are, 2, 4, 8 hours.
I'm so glad I'm here. Because we had this discussion at my house. I have like 4 sternos, and Steve said, like, we cannot do that. You need to learn from the rabbi.
So on Shabbos, we can't do that. On Yom Tov, we can do that. Exactly. Okay? So the first day of Pesach is the date of the exodus from Egypt. Then we have intermediary days called Chol HaMoed. Chol means the mundane of the Moed, of the holiday. And those are in between sort of days. We drive, electricity, all that, but it's still Pesach. So we don't eat any of the chametz, anything leavened. We only eat matzah or things that are kosher Pesach, right? Kosher for Passover. Then the 7th day is again Yom Tov, and that is the date of the splitting of the sea, right? And that's really a second stage to our leaving Egypt, because we actually left Egypt on the 15th day of Nisan. That's the first day of Passover, the 15th day of the month of Nisan. But we weren't really gone and out yet, right? Verified by the fact that Pharaoh chased after us to bring us back. At what point were we completely free? Once Pharaoh and the Egyptian army was no longer able to chase us. And that was after the splitting of the sea. We went in, they followed, we came out, the sea returned, end of Egypt. So that is the holiday of Pesach, of Passover. Right away, we start counting the days. from actually the second day of Passover, the first day of Chol HaMoed, the second day of Passover, we count 49 days until we come to the holiday of Shavuot. Shavuot is the time that we stood by Mount Sinai and we received the Torah. We count the days because just like day 1 and day 7 was a continuum of the Exodus, and those two together was the physical Exodus, but there also was the spiritual Exodus. And the spiritual Exodus was with our receiving the Torah. That is what gave us that spiritual freedom. Therefore, these two holidays are connected. And once again, Shavuot is a time where we re-enter that Shavuot zone, where the power, the forces that were available there that brought about this revelation are made available to us. And that's why the night of Shavuot, we stay up learning the entire night, because that is the time to soak in all of that Torah learning, all of that Torah acceptance. So far we have two of the Torah level holidays. Number 3 in that series, though it's not necessarily time-wise, chronologically, the next one, but number 3, we'll say in that series is the holiday of Sukkot. Right? And those 3, Passover, Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, those are called the 3 pilgrimage holidays. The Shalosh Regalim, the 3 pilgrimage holidays, because it was those 3 holidays where everyone would stream to Jerusalem, to be there in Jerusalem at the Beit HaMikdash, at the temple, for this holiday. What does Sukkot? So Pesach was the Exodus and the splitting of the sea. Shavuot is the revelation of Mount Sinai. What is Sukkot about? What are those booths about? What do they represent? The tents in the desert and the clouds of glory that accompanied us in the desert. So whereas Pesach is that one-time event of leaving Egypt, splitting sea, and Shavuot is that one-time event of standing at Mount Sinai and having that divine revelation, Sukkot is of the 40 years that we spent in the desert. And that was because of missteps that we took, be it with sin of the golden calf, with the Meraglim, with the spies, the 40 years that we were in the desert. That is what Sukkot represents. Those are our 3. Well, Sukkot is also an extended holiday. It's a 7-day holiday in the Torah. The first day, once again, is Yom Tov, right? Which is Shabbat-like, except you're allowed to cook and use the sternos. Tell Steve I said that, right? And then we have the Chol HaMoed, the Intermediary Days. And the Intermediary Days, also we live in the Sukkah, but we're able to drive and all these different things. The 8th day is no longer Sukkot. We no longer have the lulav and etrog, which we'll get to when we get closer to each of these holidays. We no longer have the Sukkah. We celebrate it as Shmini Atzeret and Simchat Torah, but that is a holiday almost without all of the props. I mean, we always have other things going on. We have the matzah, we have the lulav and etrog, we have the sukkah, we have the shofar, we have the fasting on Yom Kippur. We'll come back to those days in a moment. Shmini Atzeret is sort of like Hashem saying, just us. Just us. Right? It's the way the sages describe it is so beautifully. that throughout the holiday of Sukkot, we were bringing sacrifices for all the nations of the world. And the sages compared like God saying, all right, everyone else is going now. Just stay. Mm-hmm. Right? It's interesting. Amongst the Hasidim, when they have a wedding, so they have a big, massive wedding with hundreds of guests, at the end, just the immediate family stays for a little intimate get-together at the end. That's beautiful. And that's what Shmini Atzeret is. It's kind of like, all right, let's just all huddle up. Okay, let's get everybody in there, right? Group hug, right? Mm-hmm. That's what Shmini Atzeret is. Shmini Atzeret is that intimate family group hug. So those are three and that is a time, the clouds of glory represents that loving embrace of Hashem, of God, that supervision of God, how Hashem's taking care of us, protecting us, embracing us. And that's a time of this feeling, right? And we leave our fortified homes with our alarm systems, and we go into this simple shack. And we're there underneath the stars. We're there with Hashem, with God. And that actually, on a deeper level, represents the odyssey of mankind, meaning our souls left their place in the heavens and the spiritual world and came to this world, which is a temporary abode, in order for us to accomplish as much as we can here, as much good, as much spirituality, and then we return to our permanent place in the spiritual realm. So the Sukha cycle is really reenacting that concept. That we we come here, and here we do our best to make our connections. Okay? Those are the three Torah pilgrimage holidays. 3/4, because Sukkot and Shmini Atzeret, right, they're back to back, but it's actually considered to be a separate holiday. Okay. We have two more Torah level holidays. What are they? Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Thank you. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Rosh Hashanah is the start of the Jewish year. That is the Yom Hadin. That is the day of judgment. And that is exactly what it says, meaning it's not that we are commemorating way back then there was this day of judgment, but every year we re-enter that zone. And that is a time where we are judged. It is a loving judgment of giving us the tools that we need for the next year. Now, if it's a day of judgment, then would it make the most sense for it to be the first day of the year, as it is, or the last day of the previous year?
Isn't there disagreement about or...
Everyone agrees it's the first day of the year. But what I'm asking is, if it's a day of judgment, perhaps it would make more sense that it's the end of the last year, right? Judgment on that, and then we get started.
We're judged from what we did the following year,
Previous
and then
year?
the previous year.
Yeah, so it should be the last day of that year.
Oh, right.
Right? Mm-hmm. Except when we're being judged on what will be granted to us this next year, there are two main ideas that need to be taken into account. Number one, well, let's say I'm the CEO of a company, okay? And each of you are my division heads, right? Department heads, okay? And now we're deciding on the allocation of next year's budget. So let's say you guys had an amazing production last year, right? I'm happy to allocate, right? But, well, everyone here did great. But this person over here, right, had a rotten year. So what will get me to allocate significant funds to that guy over there, that department over there that underperformed? What will get me to allocate significant funds to that department that underperformed?
They have to prove themselves.
Sorry?
They have to prove themselves.
Good, they have to prove themselves. And I say, so this past year was a disaster. How do you plan to correct that? And they say, Mr. Ciner, we have this analysis, we've done these studies, and we are convinced that if we make these changes, then we can turn it around this year. Oh, okay. Now, with all due respect, if I turn to you, Ladero, I say, you guys had a great year last year. What are your plans for this year? And you say bowling and golf, right? Then as productive as you were last year, I'm not going to allocate all that much this year. So it's clear that what goes into the judgment is A, what we've done, but even more important than what we've done is the direction that we are pointing ourselves. Where are we heading? Where are we going? And that's why it is Rosh Hashanah, the start of the year. Rosh, the head, the start of the Shana of the year, and not Sof Hashanah, and not the end of the year. 10 days later, okay, sorry. Now, Pesach, we said, was aligned with which event? Exodus. Shavuot was aligned with which event? Sinai. Sukkot is aligned with which event?
40 years.
40 years in the Midbar. What is Rosh Hashanah aligned with? Creation of
The universe.
mankind. Not day 1 of creation, day 6 of creation. Because on that day, what was the energy granting man the tools needed to go forward? So what is the energy that we re-enter every year, Rosh Hashanah? Granting mankind, humankind, the tools that they will need for this forthcoming year. What is the mitzvah? Okay, let's backtrack for a moment. What is the mitzvah of Pesach? The matzah, eating matzah, not eating chametz. How does that link to the event? Well, we were rushing out, right? And also we had to realize we weren't leaving in order to have a cakewalk, in order to kick back. We were leaving in order to serve God. And therefore we leave and we eat matzah. Shavuot, what do? We learn the whole night. Sukkot, what do? It was God's protection. We enter the Sukkah. Rosh Hashanah is man's creation. What do? We blow the shofar. What's the connection?
To awaken the soul.
Okay, good. One idea is that's there to awaken us. Good. Gabriella, what are you saying? Oh. Well, coronation. We're accepting God as the king, so we are coronating the king. And on a deeper level, we are reenacting the creation of man. Creation of man, God blew into him a spirit. And he became a living spirit. We reenact that. We take that inanimate shofar and we bring it to life. So our mitzvah is reenacting that creation of mankind. Sorry for the chills. Okay.
I never heard that.
Yeah,
That's beautiful.
that's interesting. I've never heard that.
Well, that's why I get paid the big bucks.
I'll
Okay.
put your check in the mail.
10 days later is Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is the Day of Atonement. That is the cleansing that we go through, that we're ready to have this fresh slate, and we have this cleansing. And I always think back when I was dating Natalie. We went to her parents' house and we picked up one of the cars. We were driving somewhere, and one of her sisters had parked it under a tree, which is fine, except there were about 1,000 birds in that tree, and the car was disgusting. It was so bad that when we drove to the drive-through car wash, they laughed at us. And they said, you guys can go through twice. You're going to need it. Okay? But that's what Yom Kippur is. Yom Kippur is a chance to go through and walk out cleansed, refreshed, that we're able to leave things behind. Right? We need to regret. We need to resolve not to do it. We need to admit. And if there's anything that we've done wrong to another person, Yom Kippur doesn't do anything until you approach that person and make amends. Right? God can't forgive. It always irks me when you see on television, there was a terrible shooting and innocent people were killed, and people go, "We forgive." Exactly who are you?
Yeah.
Right? Exactly who are you to forgive? Right? You can forgive, right? If it upset you when you heard about that terrible thing, then you can forgive for the upset that was caused to you. But even God can't forgive for something that was done to another person. If God can't forgive, then I certainly can't forgive. I can forgive for the way it affected me. But that's a very powerful concept. God can't forgive. If you've hurt someone else, you need to work it out with that person. That's the only way we can have that clean slate. That is Yom Kippur, and therefore it is a day where we abstain. Right? We abstain from eating and drinking. Right? We abstain from marital relations. We abstain from washing ourselves. We abstain from putting any oils, creams on ourselves. And we don't wear leather shoes. Leather shoes is a certain degree of comfort, of pampering. Leather shoes also shows the ascendancy of mankind. We rule over this world. We walk on the animals. We take the animals and turn them into shoes for our feet. Yom Kippur is not the time for our ascendancy. Yom Kippur is the time for our humility.
Rabbi Ciner?
Yes, Leticia.
Is there a relationship between when Yom Kippur was decreed to be Yom Kippur and the golden calf, or Moses?
Okay, good. So Leticia, I hired her. She's my foil over here. Yes, exactly. So what is the historical event that aligns with Yom Kippur? So, the 6th of Sivan, the holiday of Shivohot, that was, we heard the revelation on Mount Sinai. Moshe goes up Mount Sinai, and he's there for 40 days. 40 full days, which is a night and a day. We counted that first day. We weren't supposed to count the first day because it was not a full day. We expected him to come down on what we thought was the 40th day. In fact, that was 39 day. He came down the next day. We freaked. And we built a golden calf. We freaked because Moshe was that intermediary between us and God. And now we felt, here we are. We left Egypt. We're out in the middle of the desert, and our link to God is gone. What do? And they try to create this link to God through this idol, through this golden calf. Moshe comes down, sees the golden calf, and what does he do with the tablets? Shatters the tablets. That was on the 17th day of Tammuz, which is a fast day in the summer. And a number of reasons why we fast, and we'll get to them when we get to the fast days. But one of the reasons we fast is because that was the day the luchot, the tablets were shattered. Moshe then had 40 days of, we'll call it shuttle diplomacy, trying to get us back to the point to be ready to receive the tablets. On the first day of Elul, Moshe reascended Mount Sinai for another 40 days. He came down 40 days later with the second tablets on the 10th day of Tishrei. The 10th day of the month of Tishrei is Yom Kippur. So yes, Leticia, Yom Kippur is the day of forgiveness. When Moshe came down with the second tablets, the overwhelming message of the second tablets is, you've been forgiven. The tablets that were smashed because of the golden calf have been replaced. So Yom Kippur is the time of forgiveness. It was then, as Josh said so beautifully before, that's the energy that's present every year at that time. And that is what we re-enter, what we re-access comes Yom Kippur every year. Okay. Now, Sukkot, I said, was part of the cycle of the three pilgrimage holidays, the Shalosh, three regalim, Passover, Shavuot, Sukkot. Sukkot is also part of the Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot cycle. Okay, it's part of both cycles. Because when Moshe came down with the second Luchot, what did they start to do? They started to build the Mishkan, the tabernacle. On the 15th day of Tishrei, which is the date of the holiday of Sukkot, that is when the clouds of glory, which had escorted us out of Egypt and had been with us, they left during the time of at the time of the golden calf, and they returned on Sukkot. So Sukkot is the 40 years in the Midbar, but it's the returning of the clouds of glory after we had been forgiven. Okay? As we started to build the Mishkan, the tabernacle. Okay? The tabernacle, take a look in Shemot, Exodus, the Parsha of Teruma, my Bar Mitzvah Parsha, and you'll see there about all the parts of the tabernacle. Okay. Those are our Torah level holidays. We have, at this point in our history, we have two rabbinic holidays. And the two clear rabbinic holidays that we have are Chanukah, coming up next week. Sunday night is the first night of Chanukah. And Purim, which comes out March time. Okay? Each of these holidays line up with one of the three pilgrimage holidays. Each of these rabbinic holidays line up with one of the three pilgrimage holidays. The one that aligns with Pesach, which is the Exodus, will be the holiday, the full holiday of our Geula, of our redemption, of the Messianic times. That will be the full holiday, which will be that that full realization of Pesach. Pesach was exodus into freedom, into a spirituality. So the rabbinic holiday that will be the full rabbinic holiday will be at the time of the Mashiach, Messianic times. Our return to Israel, which was as miraculous as could be after 2,000 years of exile. So there is the holiday of Yom HaAtzmaut, which is a stepping stone to Israel Independence Day, which is a stepping stone towards the full Geula holiday. So now we're left with Chanukah and Purim. One of them is aligned with Shavuot, and the other one is aligned with Sukkot. Let's briefly deal with Purim. Purim, we know that there was Achashverosh. Everybody familiar with the Purim story? Okay. Haman was his advisor, a descendant of Amalek, the nation that's always tried to destroy us. And all the Jews were meant to be annihilated on one day. And it got turned around, and we were able to attack our enemies, make sure they could not attack us, and we had that deliverance. The sages teach us that we accepted the Torah me'ahava. What is ahava? Love. We accepted the Torah again at that point out of love. Okay? That is aligned with Shavuot. Receiving the Torah. Chanukah is a very, very fascinating exile that we were in. Because Purim, we were in the Babylonian exile. Meaning, the first temple stood for 410 years. It was destroyed by the Babylonians. Then we went into exile for 70 years, the Babylonian exile. The story of Purim took place at the very end of that Babylonian exile, and we'll get to that in due time. Hanukkah took place during the Second Temple in Jerusalem, in Israel. We were in Israel. The temple stood, but we had an exile. The exile is that we were under the control of the Assyrian Greeks, and they had defiled the temple. They were not allowing us to do the service there. They had taken all the oil, which was pure oil that was used to light the menorah. They had defiled it. And the Hashmonaim, they rose up in a revolt. And it literally was a band of people against the most powerful army. And miraculously, they were victorious. They re-entered the temple. They found one flask of oil, enough oil to burn for one day. They went ahead and they lit it, and it miraculously burned for 8 days. And that is our 8-day holiday of Chanukah. And that is the idea that even when we are in a dark exile, we carry on. And our light, it's not the flashing lights of Vegas. It's the very small, modest, penetrating lights. And that represents who we are and what we are. We never became this biggest nation, right? Steady, consistent, steadfast, holding on, not willing to give up. That is Hanukkah every single year. Okay? So how does that align with Sukkot?
Both 8 days.
Sorry?
And they're both a week.
Okay, they're both 8 days. Good. What else? Give me more.
clouds of glory, the protection of Hashem.
Okay, Hashem's protection, and they're both a rededication of the temple, right? That's the rededication of the temple, and this was the building of the tabernacle, which was the step towards the temple. Okay, let's go through some of the things of Hanukkah. So the mitzvot of Hanukkah is basically lighting the Chanukiah, right? We call it the menorah, the Chanukiah, which is that eight branched candelabra. You don't need that. I mean, you should have one, good to have one, but, well, we need to light, the first night we light 1, second night 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's actually a dispute. There's an opinion that said we go 8 down to 1. We go, right, we hold that we go 1 up to 8. It needs to burn for at least a half hour into the dark, right? It gets dark about 5:30. It needs to burn until about 6 o'clock. If you're getting the little Hanukkah box of those nice colored candles, they burn about a half hour. Okay? Friday night, we have an issue. Because Friday night, right, we need to light the Chanukiah before we light the Shabbat candles. We're lighting Shabbat candles at about 4:25. So they got to burn for an hour and a half. Those candles from the box don't stand a chance. Okay? So on Friday night, you've got to do it differently. Okay? So what do? If you've got a big Chanukiah, if you're lighting oil, I light oil. If you're lighting oil, it's not a problem because the oil burns for a good couple of hours no matter what. If you're using candles, you'll need to use Shabbat candles, the thicker candles. If your Shabbat candles are not going to fit into your Chanukiah, so then you'll just take, what night is that? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The 6th night, you'll take 6 tea lights and line them up. That's what I'm saying. You don't have to have the candelabra. You need to have a clear lineup of lights for that night. Okay?
So on Shabbat, it's okay to use the tea lights?
On Shabbat, before you light your Shabbat candles, your Chanukiah should be either oil, your Chanukiah needs to be something that will burn for a good hour and a half. Okay? Not those little candles. It'll need to be Shabbat candles, if they could fit, if you can line them up. If you're having problems lining them up, you don't want a fire hazard, right? That's not worth it, right? So use tea lights. Line up 6 tea lights, and that will be your Chanukiah. You light Hanukkah candles, right? And then you light your Shabbat candles.
And then do you go back to your candelabrum?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And come Saturday night after Havdalah, you go back to your usual programming, your usual Chanukiah. Okay? Now, everybody have a Siddur?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So the brachot, the blessings for, and there's a custom to eat latkes, to eat oily food.
I'm not gonna forget.
Yes. Okay? And the idea of the oily food, whether it's latkes or sufganiot, which are those jelly donuts, right?
Yes.
So the idea is the dermatologists have to earn a living. Come on. No. Right? The idea is that the miracle happened with oil, right? And that's why the ideal way is to light a Chanukiah with oil, because that's how the miracle took place. Okay.
We need to introduce some cooking classes at this conversion. This is not gonna work.
Okay. So page 782, if you guys at home have the Art Scroll Siddur, page 782. If not, look in the table of contents. where it says Chanukah. Okay, so we have 3 blessings. That's for the first night. We make 3 blessings and then we light. So the Chanukiah has, and we start on the right side, and then we keep adding one more to the left, but we light the newest candle first. So we're setting up right to left, but we're lighting left to right. So on the second night, there's 1, 2 candles, and these 6 are open. I light number 2, then number 1. On day number 4, I light, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 from the right-hand side, but I light 4, 3, 2, 1. We have another candle set up besides the ones we're setting up that's called the shamish. And that's, if it's a candle, that's what you use to light the others. If it's oil, then you light whatever you use, a match or a candle from there to light the others. Okay. So the shamash is lit. And then we make, on the first night, we make these 3 brachot. On every subsequent night, we make the first 2 brachot. The first bracha is like any mitzvah. Blessed are you, Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, King of the universe, asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav. You sanctified us with your commandments. Vitzivanu, you commanded us, lahadlik ner shel Chanukah, to kindle the light of Chanukah. And then we make the second blessing. Baruch atah Hashem, bless you Hashem, Elokeinu Agad melech haolam, sha'asim nisim lavotenu, that you performed miracles for our fathers. Bayamim hahem, in those days, bazman hazeh, at this time. What are we saying with at this time? The time is back. The energy is back. Bazman hazeh, right? We're not commemorating. We are re-entering the zone. On the first night, then with you, Gabriel, sorry, that you've kept us alive, Vikiyamanu, sustained us, Vihigiyanu, and you brought us Lazman Hazeh, to this time, to this season. Okay? That we only make the first time that we're lighting, which is the first night. Person wasn't able to light the first night, they'll make that blessing the second night. The first time, but when we reach this new mitzvah, that's when we make the mitzvah of Shechiyanu, that you've kept us alive.
Only first night.
Only the first night. The other nights, we make the first 2 blessings. So the first night, after the 3rd blessing, is when we'll kindle that first candle. On subsequent nights, after the 2nd blessing, is when we'll kindle 2, 1, 3, 2, 1. Right after we make that blessing. Okay. Once the blessings have been made and the first candle has been kindled, then we say this paragraph of Hanerot Halalu. Hanerot Halalu, these lights which we kindle upon the miracles, the wonders, the salvations, the battles which you perform for our forefathers on those days at this season through your holy priest. During our all 8 days of Hanukkah, these lights are sacred. We are not permitted to make ordinary use of them, but to look at them in order to express thanks and praise to your great name for your miracles, your wonders, and your salvations. Okay? Yes, Gabriela.
So if the blessing says...
Great question. Yes.
If it says Vitzivanu, but it's a rabbinic holiday.
Great question. Great
We're saying,
question.
Hashem, you commanded us.
Good. Beautiful. Beautiful. That was the next point I wanted to touch upon. Good. Great question. I understand when the Torah tells us to eat matzah, we make the blessing. You commanded us to eat the matzah. I understand when we put on the tefillin, right, which, right, talit, men in the conversion process put on. Tefillin, you actually wait until the actual conversion. So let me say the talit, right? So you make the blessing. You commanded us to wrap ourselves in the talit, because it says in the Shema and the Torah that we should have the tzitzit. So when the Torah commands us to do something, it makes perfect sense to say, you sanctified, blessed are you, God, you sanctified with the commandments and commanded us to etc. Okay? Oh, just as an aside, when you're putting on your talit, men, in the morning, so after you make the blessing, you wrap yourself in the talit. And there are a couple of verses to say then, in Hebrew and English, right? Mayikar, how precious is Chazdek Elokim, is your kindness. B'nei Adam, a person, B'tzel Kanafecha, in the comfort of your wings, Yecheseyun, right? They take refuge. When you're wrapping yourself in the talis, feel that hug. Right? Feel that embrace. Feel those anane hakava, those clouds of glory. Take a minute to feel that embrace. It's a great way to start your day with God giving you a hug like that. Okay? Feel that. Okay? But coming back to Gabriela's excellent question. If this is rabbinic, how do we say, blessed are you, Hashem, your God, our God, King of the universe, who sanctifies and commanded us to kindle the Chanukah light? How do we say God commanded us when God did not command us?
Is it because Hashem gave authority to the sages?
Okay. So the Gemara asks your question, and the Gemara gives your answer. The Gemara is the Talmud, right? Gives your answer. There is a pasuk which says, Lo tasur, do not deviate from the teachings of your leaders, of your guidance. So, right, if God says, right, if I were to say, I want you all to listen to Ladero, and Ladero asks you to do something, so in effect, what are you doing? Whose command are you following? You're following my command. I told you guys to listen to Ladero. Ladero told you to do something. You do it. You're actually following my command. Hashem commanded us, lo tasur, do not deviate from the teachings of the sages. And therefore, we're able to say, tzivanu. When you find women light, Shabbat candles, right? You light Shabbat candles. You make the blessing, Asher Kiddishanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat, to kindle the lights of Shabbat. Why don't you ask your question over there, Gabriela? Right? Same question, right? Right? And same answer. Okay? So that is the way that we perform this as we work our way through Chanukah. And Chanukah is a time of celebration, right? It's a time of celebration, a time of rejoicing. The davening changes, and we add on. If you want to take a look at the Amidah, we'll take a look at Shacharit, but it's for all the Amidot. Let's take a look on page 112.
And the Birkat Hamazon.
And Birkat Hamazon also. We add in on page 112, okay, the bottom gray paragraph, after the blessing of Modim, which is Thanksgiving. See that, guys? Thanksgiving. I told you it was a Jewish holiday, right? Right? After the blessing of Thanksgiving, as part of our Thanksgiving, we say this Al Hanisim. We'll say it in English: for the miracles, for the salvation, for the mighty deeds, the victories, the battles we performed for our forefathers in those days. Once again, at this time. That's Josh's energy. At this time. Turn the page. We have the Purim paragraph, which will say on Purim, and we have the Chanukah. Thank you. We have to work on resetting that a little past 8:30. Okay, right? And then we have the Chanukah paragraph, which is in the days of Matziyahu, son of Yochanan, Kohen priest, right? Etc. Right? The wicked Greek kingdom rose up against your people to make them forget your Torah, compel them straight from your statutes of your will. You in your great mercy stood up for them in the time of distress. Their grievance, judge their claim, avenge their wrong, deliver the strong in the hands of the weak, many of the few, impure of the pure, wicked of the righteous. wanted in the hands of the diligent students of your Torah. Your son made a great holy name in your world, your people, you worked a great victory, salvation as is very, that your children came to the Holy of Holies of your house, cleansed your temple, purified the site of your holiness, and kindled lights in the courtyards of your sanctuary, and established these 8 days of Hanukkah to express thanks and praise to your great name. Okay, so that is inserted into all of our Amidot, whether it's Shacharit morning, Mincha afternoon, Mariv evening, whether it is a Musaf on Shabbat. This is added into all. And Gabriella mentioned also that it's included in the grace after meals, and you'll find that in the Sidur on page 180, 184 actually, 184. Right there's where it starts. And actually, this Shabbat of Hanukkah is the longest possible benching, Birkat HaMazon, grace after meals that we ever have. Let's take a quick look at it now, and we'll work on this when we get to the brachot stage. The first blessing for the nourishment on page 184 in the bottom. Okay. Then we start the second blessing for the land on page 186, and we insert Al Hanisim throughout Hanukkah, right? Al Hanisim again on Hanukkah. Then we continue as we do it every time we bench 188 Al Hakol. That concludes the second blessing, the first paragraph 188. The next paragraph is the start of the third blessing for Jerusalem. And on Shabbat, we add in the gray box on the bottom there, 188, Ritzei. So Shabbos, Hanukkah, we're adding in both Shabbos and Al Hanisim. And then this Shabbos of Hanukkah this year happens to also be Rosh Chodesh, which is the start of the new month. So on page 190, you're also adding in Ya'aleh V'Yavo. On Rosh Chodesh festivals, add the following paragraph. And then the rest of 190 and 192 and 194 is a continuation of Birkat HaMazon. So all of the possible additions happen, right, Hanukkah. It can only happen Hanukkah because Purim is not going to be on Shabbos, and Purim is the 14th of the month, so it can never be on Rosh Chodesh. But Hanukkah is on the 25th day of the month of Kislev, 8 days. So there is a new month in the middle. It doesn't always fall out on Shabbat. This year it falls out on Shabbat, giving us the Guinness World Book record for the longest benching. That's what we get this year.
Question, Rabbi.
Yes.
Do we ever start by the rivers of Babylon on the weekday or on Shabbat?
On Shabbat, we always start with Shir Hamalot.
Okay, cool.
On weekdays, we don't necessarily start with Al Narot Bavel.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not what's normally necessarily done.
Okay.
But on Shabbat and holidays, we always start with Shir Hamalot, and festive occasions also. If it's a Brit, right, all these things also we'd start over there.
Rabbi?
Yes.
Is it the Al Hanisim or Al Hanisim? Like, which one is the one? Because there's the and.
Yes.
For
Yes.
cycles,
So the Ashkenaz version is without the Vav, just Al Hanisim. Okay. Good. Any other questions? I know you guys turned the lights off on me already. I got the hint. But any other questions?
Are there, when it comes to the holidays, are we allowed to keep the full holiday, or do we have to break it a little bit because we're not Jewish yet?
Okay.
Spot, right?
Yeah. So the only thing, Shabbat, you wouldn't fully keep Shabbat. Yeah. 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 But you should and could make the brachot and light Chanukah, and this is the time for all of you to live it fully, right? Make sure you want to do this, right? You have to go through the whole cycle, right? And then you take the plunge.
Now, when we break it on Shabbat, what does that look like? And like, do you do it multiple times, or is it one?
Just one time. Look, and look. We will never ask you if the lights go out. We're not going to say to you, "Hey, Daryl," we're never going to ask you anything like that, right? Privately, right? on Shabbat, you're not supposed to tear, right? That's what we write. So in the bathroom, we keep a box of tissues, so you're not tearing, right?
Yeah.
In the bathroom might be a good place to, no one's watching,
Gotcha.
That would be that would be a good time and place.
Okay.
It wouldn't be to turn on the television to catch the Laker game. Okay.
Or the coffee.
Yeah.
I'll message you as well because I have a question about a light bulb and the refrigerator.
That's so funny. We always have the exact question, but you ask.
Yeah.
Like I was gonna ask about the beginning, the beginning prayer before the one that we did on weekdays too. I was gonna ask that. Yeah.
Okay.
And the refrigerator.
But we
I think it's a very good shidduch over here.
It
Very
is.
good. Okay.
But we have a refrigerator. I'm not sure if we can take a bulb out. So how does that work?
Okay. So the older fashioned refrigerators had a nice little bulb, and you would undo the bulb. Okay.
Yeah.
The newer refrigerators have these LED, which are very hard. Now, some, like our refrigerator, has a Shabbat mode, right? So we hold these two buttons down for 3 seconds, and all of a sudden it flashes Shab, S-H-A-B, and therefore opening the door does not turn on any lights. Many don't have that. I'm sorry?
Doesn't make ice either.
Right. It doesn't make ice either. However, I've gotten pretty good at this. Now, some of the older LED, when you open the door, there's a little switch there that gets pushed in, right? If you've got that, that's easy. Then you just take some duct tape, right? So, when the door is closed, it's compressed. When the door is open, it comes open, right? And that turns the light on. And when you close the door, it compresses and the light goes off. So there, you just take some duct tape and tape it. And that way, the piece always stays in. It thinks the door is always closed. Even when you open the door, the light does not get activated. But the newer refrigerators don't have that. So how do they know when the door is open or closed? The way it knows is there's a little magnet on the door and a little magnet on the panel. So when the door closes, it gets magnetized and it knows it's closed and the light goes off. When you open it, it's not magnetized, it senses that and the light goes on. So if you'll take a magnet, a little magnet, has to be fairly strong, and put it on top of your refrigerator, you'll need to see the doors open. You need to play with it a little bit, but start moving it on the top over there with the door open, and all of a sudden you'll see, the light just went off. Move it further, light went on. That's the spot. Mark that spot. And comes Erev Shabbos, put the magnet over there, and we've tricked. Things have gotten very smart. I'm not smarter than my phone anymore, but I'm still smarter than the refrigerator, okay? So we tricked the refrigerator into thinking that the magnetized door is closed by putting a magnet there, and you are good to go. That works. That works. Basically, the way the refrigerators are made are either there's that button, and that's how it knows open or closed, or magnet. So if you have the bulb, easy, unscrew the bulb. If you don't have that, if you have the button, tape the button. If not, play with the magnet.
Okay.
And if you go into Ace Hardware, you'll be able to buy, I'm sure. I mean, we were staying in a place, and there was an Ace Hardware across the street. Got a whole bunch of magnets, and that's how we got that refrigerator to obey our Shabbat wishes, to become Shabbat observant. Okay?
Thank you.
Very good. Okay, guys, next week, Tuesday night, is we're having a whole event here, painting, all the things going on, so we will not have our class Tuesday night. If you want to take off a week, we can. If you want to get together Monday night, we can. It is up to you guys.
We're down Monday.
Okay. All right.
We don't want to miss weeks.
I cannot do Monday.
Okay. Is Wednesday night better, equally good for everyone? No? Okay, so let's go then. You guys can do Monday night.
We can, yeah.
I could probably zoom in. I could zoom in.
For Wednesday?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can do Wednesday.
Okay, so if that's okay, we'll do Wednesday and we'll have it also Zooming. So next week we'll meet Wednesday night, regular time, okay? And I'll see you then, and a wonderful Hanukkah to everybody. And please come join us at the events that we're having over here.
Awesome.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
Very good. Okay, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night, good night.
This is
Yes, yes, feel free to take.
You know,
Yes.
I just got a question. So most of the holidays have like a customary greeting. What's the greeting